Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Winters. I am here to welcome you on behalf of the American Academy of Pediatrics Vermont chapter. And the goal of these forums is really to provide factual information on the COVID-19 vaccine in adolescents and have conversations with families. So I encourage all of you to please use the chat box and type in any questions at any point that come up, and we will ask them of Dr. Orton at the end during the question and answer period. And I will also add a link to a Google form where if after this forum you have a question, you can submit questions there, or as always, we encourage you to contact your pediatrician or your primary care physician. So on behalf of pediatricians, I know that they are privileged to source of information around vaccination, and the COVID-19 vaccine is no different. Protecting children and adolescents from vaccine-preventable illness is a top priority for pediatricians, and they are ready to counsel families on this important decision. So with that, I am happy to introduce Dr. Judy Orton, pediatrician at Green Mountain Pediatrics, and she's going to lead you through a presentation and then answer the questions that you have. So thank you for being with us, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Orton, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy that you've joined us. Tonight we'll have an overview of what COVID is and share some of the current data, some of our concerns with how children are doing, not just physically, but emotionally. It's been a pretty rough year for all of us, but particularly for them. There's a video clip from our chapter president, Dr. Rebecca Bell, that is really quite informative about COVID in general and the vaccines. And hopefully we'll be able to provide information for you so you can make an informed decision for you and your family. This is updated as of yesterday. Yes, yesterday. I had to think what date it was. About how many cases there are. Roughly in the 20 to 29 group, our young adults, it's around 4,800 cases. The 0 to 9 and 10 to 19 is steadily increasing slowly. Obviously, they're getting out and around a little bit more, so potential a little bit more exposure, particularly since many of the 0 to 19 have parents in the 20 to 39 age group. It's only natural that children are going to get it from their families. There's a pretty even sex distribution, male to female. We are primarily a Caucasian state, but people of color are being hit hard. So, they have a much higher rate of having COVID disease. This is updated as of last Friday, but you can see the, general trend of children. This is the orange bottom at the bottom, 14 to 18-year group. It does not include college kids. There's a little bit of uptick in the early April, kind of probably reflective of vacations. We're steadily seeing them. I'm not testing as many children in this past month as what I've done in previous months because we're not seeing as many cases. But again, the reason is that we are having fewer cases because if you did an overlay about the number of vaccines generally in the adults, as the number of vaccinations have gone up, the number of cases have gone down. In general, high school age students have a little higher rate, but again, they're out and about. Some of them are in the workforce or playing sports. They tend to be more social and maybe not as diligent about social distancing and limiting their contact. But as you can see, during the shutdown, we weren't really having very many cases. Again, there's been that uptick around early April. It's, mostly coming down. We haven't seen the cases. Most children do okay, but what's really powerful is how they're not doing so okay emotionally. There was Catherine Luton interviewed a fair number of children, and these quotes stand out. We have Zoom, Google Meet, FaceTime, and every other form of video service at our fingertips, but we don't have a true connection. There's no replacement for the smiles in the hallway, the feeling of winning playoff games, and the satisfaction of knowing the correct answer. We want to be kids, but the pandemic has forced us to grow. We're still young, but we feel so aged by all we have dealt with. We want to cry about all we're missing, as we're still just kids trying to cope. But we also know that we are grateful for our health and safety. We feel guilty, relieved, and completely terrified. We're big kids. We can handle the truth, but we also want our loved ones to hold us tight and tell us it'll be all right. We miss our lives. We miss just being kids. And even, these are powerful messages. Not every child is articulate as these three were, but I can tell you in my experience, every single visit, there is something about what they're missing out, how they're feeling. It's coming out in sadness, in being more irritable, maybe not sleeping as well. Just a number of things. And any of you as parents, you certainly, I don't have to tell you, you're experiencing it. This is Rebecca Bell. I'm going to play a video. I hope. Oh, there we go. Try to get that going.
Hi there, I'm Becca Bell. I'm a pediatrician in Burlington and the current president of the Vermont chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I'm just going to take a few moments to talk about how excited we are as pediatricians that the COVID-19 vaccine is available for young people now. So I'm a pediatric intensivist, which means I take care of children in the pediatric intensive care unit at UVM Children's Hospital. And I take care of infants, children, and adolescents who are critically ill or injured. And so vaccines are something that have always been really important to me because they help prevent a lot of the very serious illness I sometimes see in the ICU when children are too young or haven't been vaccinated against a vaccine preventable infection. And when I think back to last spring when everything was shutting down and I was working with some of my other ICU colleagues who care for adults, and we were really worried about the number of ventilators and the number of hospital beds. If you had told me then a year ago that we would have a number of safe and effective vaccines that in trials, when tested on tens of thousands of people, prevented people from not just dying, but even becoming seriously ill enough to even be in the hospital, I don't know if I would have believed it. It's amazing how effective these vaccines are. And a lot of people are wondering, how are we able to get these vaccines so quickly? It seems like quite a feat. And, in pediatrics, we're used to vaccines taking a little bit longer. And part of that is that there's a lot of competing interests in terms of what type of research and technology gets funded, right? Lots of competing interests there. And when we test vaccines on other types of infections, usually those infections aren't as common, aren't as prevalent. And so it takes a while to get all that data. But with COVID-19, as we all know, the world stopped last spring, just completely stopped. And the biggest priority that everyone had in the world was stopping this virus. And what that meant really was having safe and effective vaccines. That became the top priority. And so every effort was turned towards that. All this funding was turned towards that. And a ton of collaboration happened in order to make this possible. So I want to talk a little bit about the vaccines that you all qualify for, are eligible for, or will be soon, and that's the messenger RNA vaccine. So that's the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So this is a technology that's been in use in cancer therapies, and also scientists have been using it to study vaccines for other infections. And so when the world was told what the SARS-CoV-2 virus looked like, that was something that was shared with everyone, people got to work. And so they used this technology that already existed, and they made it applicable to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And because there was so much funding going towards this, they were able to make this happen on a little bit of a quicker timeline than usual, but all the steps were there. They went through every single step. And because COVID-19 is so prevalent, when they did the efficacy trials to see if it worked, and they gave vaccine to some people and a placebo to other people, they saw very quickly that the people who received the vaccine weren't getting sick from COVID-19. And the people who didn't receive it were getting sick. And that data was collected so quickly that they were able to get a pretty definitive answer that these vaccines are really effective. And one thing that I think is so interesting about the mRNA vaccine is that it really gives your body instructions for how to make a protein that looks like what's on the virus. So what do I mean by that? So when you get the vaccine, this mRNA is like a little piece of instruction, or I almost think about it like a handwritten recipe that's sort of passed down in your family, right? You have a piece of paper with a recipe, and then these are instructions. Then your cells can make, based on the instructions, can make a spike protein with that. Then once it's made, recipe goes away, and the mRNA, it just kind of disintegrates and disappears. And then what you have is this harmless spike protein that's not the virus, but is similar enough that your immune system can look at it, recognize it, and get ready for it in case they ever see the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this is really important because this is what will stop the virus from replicating throughout your body if you're exposed to SARS-CoV-2 and making you very sick. And one of the things we know in intensive care medicine is that these viruses, SARS-CoV-2 in particular, the virus itself can cause a problem in your body. It can cause direct injury and illness. But the other problem is on the other end, when your immune system is trying to fight off that virus, that battle that happens can create a ton of inflammation and a lot of problems and a lot of illness. So it's that back and forth between it's the virus and your immune system. When you get exposed to the virus, when you get sick, that can make you really sick. Now, in someone who's been vaccinated, instead, their body sees the virus and their immune system's already ready. They already have the antibodies. They recognize it really quickly before the virus can kind of get out of hand. And they've got the cells ready that they know they need to fight off this virus. And that's why people aren't getting very sick. They're not dying. And if anything, they might have a mild cold after being vaccinated. And that is what's so amazing, is that these vaccines give your cells this recipe for how to create this spike protein. Your body then, your immune system then learns it, understands it, recognizes it, and gets ready for it. So when the first authorization happened, first with Pfizer in December, I was one of the lucky ones to get vaccinated pretty early. And as you can imagine, there were lines of doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers who were just so excited to get this vaccine. I mean, it was emotional. I felt emotional getting the vaccine for the first time, knowing that I was protecting my body. And then I got my second shot in January and had the expected, many people kind of feel crummy the next day because they have that, they can sense their immune system sort of recognizing again this spike protein and sort of revving up for it. And then fine after a day, felt fine after a day. And it's just been so amazing seeing my rest of my family and my friends and my colleagues and everyone I love getting vaccinated. My own children are too young right now. They don't qualify, but I'm going to be so relieved and so grateful when the vaccines are approved for their age group, and they will be first in line. So I just wanted to spend a moment just to really let everyone know that, we're living in this really, really challenging time. This virus has really wreaked havoc directly and indirectly, and it's affected all of us. But there is this really bright spot, and that is these vaccines they're really effective, and they're really doing what we want them to do, which is to keep us from getting sick. And we really want you to ask questions. If you have questions about the vaccine, we're here for you. Pediatricians are really excited that the people we love, our patients, are going to get vaccinated soon. And we're happy to walk you and your family through this process and work towards getting our communities healthy and getting back to doing all the stuff that we love doing. So thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to reach out to your pediatrician and reach out to us, and we're happy to work with you on this. Take care. Hi there, I'm Becca Bell. I'm a pediatrician.
Hold on. I may need help here, Stephanie.
Yep, Judy, you should be able to just,
click
you
on
should be able to just hit the arrow.
Yep, there we go. Okay. Momentary lapse of technology savvy here. Okay. Powerful message from Dr. Bell. And
Dr. Orton, do you want to share your video again?
No, what is the video running? No, I'm good. Oh, for me, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. Yeah, technology problem solved. Okay. So why should you vaccinate your teen? I get this question. I've been having this question as we've talked about vaccines potentially, being approved and coming forward. But for parents, there may be a number of reasons. Top of that is you want your teenager back in school, and they would like to be back in school without all the masking and not being able to social distance and all the other things that have been happening this past year. Are you tired of quarantining after exposure? Guess what? If you're vaccinated and you get exposed, you don't have to continue. You don't have to quarantine. If you're not feeling well, yes, you should stay home. You should contact your physician. Maybe you get tested, or maybe it is just a run-of-the-mill cold and you're better the next day, and everyone can go about their business. It really leads to freedom. You don't need to. You can go away on vacation. You don't have to quarantine when you come home. You don't have to test when you come home. You can see your friends worry-free. I mean, this weekend, we're able to celebrate with another family who's vaccinated, and we've only been talking on the phone. It was so nice to be in person, and I can only imagine how you would feel, or how your teens would feel, to be able to do this, be able to socialize and travel and play sports. I know my godson couldn't wait, and he actually got his first dose on Thursday, because life will get back to normal. He'll be able to go out of state to play hockey and travel and do and see family and all the things that everyone took for granted in 2019, but since then has not been so for granted. So really, you know, life is more normal like. You probably have plenty of questions about the vaccines. You know, this one was authorized for teens older than 16 as of December 2020. Vermont rollout didn't necessarily include those 16-year-olds because they did it by age strata, but it has been around, has been given in other states since December. This very same vaccine, it's the Pfizer, was recommended on May 12th for those ages 12 to 15. It works similarly to all the other vaccines your child has received. In terms of the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the COVID, the virus will get inside and multiply inside your body. The vaccine stops this by helping the immune system make special proteins against that spike protein, and makes the antibodies so that it fights it off. So you have a much lower chance of getting COVID disease if you're vaccinated, and you know, essentially 100% avoidance of severe disease and hospitalizations and death. Again, as Dr. Bell mentioned, you might get a little, you know, feel like you have a little cold if you get COVID, but you know, you're not likely to lose your sense of smell or taste. You're not likely to get the severe cough and the extreme fatigue that happens with it, and certainly stay out of the hospital and stay off the ventilators. There's 3 different vaccines. The Pfizer is the only one so far that's approved for youth over 12. Pfizer and Moderna both require 2 doses. Pfizer is 3 weeks apart. Moderna is 4 weeks apart. Johnson & Johnson involves a single shot. Again, you have to be over 18 for the Moderna and the Johnson & Johnson because the studies are still ongoing as to the safety and efficacy in younger people with the other 2 vaccines. As you may remember, the J&J was temporarily halted, and because of some serious blood clots, you know, and the process worked. They're looking at data every single day and making sure that what's out there is being safe for the populace. They looked at it and said, you know, geez, this is an extremely remote thing that can happen, and certainly you know, ended the pause. So if you're over 18, you can choose this one. Now all of the vaccines are highly effective. They have different endpoints, so it's hard to compare them head to head, but the basic major endpoint is, does it prevent hospitalizations? Does it prevent death and serious illness? And the answer is a resounding yes with this. We still don't know how long the immunity from the vaccine will protect people. You know, we're all in this ongoing study to determine. From what I understand, you know, 6 months out, the immunity is holding high. I guess I jumped ahead a slide. I already said. So there are variants and that are more circulating now than when the earlier vaccines were being tested. Most of them are found to still have some prevention against these variants, but that is of concern. If you're not vaccinated, these variants are even more serious than the original. So being vaccinated it certainly will help protect you against all of this, at least to some degree, and you know, not risking our child's health to the variants would be the ideal. Side effects are just a normal part of getting a vaccine. If you all remember having had a tetanus vaccine, you know, the tetanus makes your arm sore, kind of simulating what the disease does if you would have tetanus, which would be really severe muscle soreness and actually tetany. So the same can be said for COVID. It simulates the disease in some respects. But overall, there are pretty minor side effects that go away pretty quickly, and it's been safe and effective in adults and in the trials of the younger children. We're going to continue to monitor, and no shortcuts were taken with this vaccine. With the concerns, did it roll out too quickly? Every single step of safety monitoring has been and continues to occur with the COVID vaccine. Some people, my husband was one of the lucky ones, didn't get any side effects at all. The most common side effects have been fever, chills, headache, fatigue, nausea, pain in the muscles. I had, you know, some muscle soreness in my arm. Most of the time, unless I bumped it, I even forgot that it was there. The next day after, I was tired, and when I came home from work, I said, "Yeah, I'm eating dinner, I'm going to bed," and I felt fine the next day. So they really are temporary, and they go away within a few days, and certainly much better than having the disease itself. With the Pfizer and Moderna, it takes a couple weeks after the second dose to have maximum effect of the immunity to the virus. For J&J, it takes 2 to 4 weeks after that dose. Do vaccines cost? The COVID vaccines are free whether or not you have health insurance. The clinical trial for the younger adolescents has been shown to be safe and effective. The clinical trials for the children as young as 6 months is in process. And on a personal note, I really hope that those that are 5 and above, the 5 to 12-year-olds or 5 to 11-year-olds, I don't have any insider information. I just really hope that by the end of summer that has been approved, so that even for our youngsters in the elementary schools, we can get them vaccinated, and their school year will look a whole lot different than it has this past year plus. What about other vaccines at the same time? Initially, that wasn't happening, but there have been, you know, some people who have received co-administered vaccines or vaccines within a short time before or after COVID, and there has not been any side effects. Certainly, this vaccine is not acting any differently than any other vaccine that we routinely give, and we co-administer routine childhood vaccines all the time. So it is safe. You know, if your child is behind in any vaccine or is due for vaccines, go ahead and get them done. Don't worry about the timing with that in the COVID. And if it happens to be within the same week or even the same day, that's okay to do. Your child might not think it's okay to get multiple shots in the same day, but it really is safe and effective. How do you get them? You can, the easiest way is to go and register, and you can register ahead of time too, and then make your appointment afterwards, but registering online, and then you can pick your site. Obviously, our hospital has been running a long-term site at the old Southern Vermont College. Sometimes you can get a walk-in appointment, but it's best to go ahead and schedule ahead of time. I know on this Saturday that there is a special clinic for all the students, the 12 to 17s, that's a time to get vaccinated. They are offered at the local stores. I know CVS, Walgreens, and Hannaford's, and Price Chopper are all giving vaccines, and Pfizer specifically. You do need to go ahead and register online. you shouldn't have to wait weeks for a vaccine. So insider information, if you go on early in the morning, 8 o'clock, you can usually snag the few appointments that open up each day if you want to be vaccinated at one of the pharmacies. So the best way to guarantee a dose is to register in advance. Parents or guardians can add their children as dependents. You need to schedule. There are some school clinics going on, but you need to schedule an appointment, and you have to provide consent. If your child happens to walk on, they're a 16-year-old driving and forgot to get your permission. You've talked about it, but they just forgot the permission slip. They will call you from the vaccine sites to get your verbal consent, and that's acceptable over the phone. Again, there may be some limited walk-in, but best if you register ahead. Right now, we don't have any school clinics here in the SVSU district. I do believe BBA is having one in their gymnasium or that area up there also on the 22nd on Saturday, and Twin Valley is having one at their school. But for us here in the SVSU district, it's at the hospital or at the pharmacies. Some resources if you want to delve more into this. Obviously, calling your pediatrician, calling your family physician. We're always happy to provide more information and answer your questions. And that being, I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Orton. There are some questions that have come into the chat screen, and I'm going to see if that works. There we go. So first, I would like to say I did put in the chat box the list of school and community-based clinics that are being updated regularly. The list does indicate that there is one clinic on the 22nd at SVC Former College Gymnasium as part of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union. I don't know if that helps. And then there are a couple others in the Bennington area as well on that day, on the 22nd. And so I did put that list in there, so please take a look. And again, you can go anywhere. So if you're in a border area, or you find one in a town near you, you can certainly hop over and go there. So the first question is, how would you quantify the level, if any, of concern about possible unidentified side effects for teens based on all the research about RNA messenger processes?
So there really is no risk from the mRNA. It is, as Dr. Bell said, it's the recipe. It's gone from your body within hours after delivering its message and delivering the recipe. So there is really no long-term effects. We don't anticipate, based on, because this vaccine is no different than any of the other childhood vaccines that have been given for decades and without any long-term consequences from the vaccines. Great.
The next question is a comment, but I think is the question embedded in it. This is a nervous parent. They almost lost their son in December, and before the shutdown from COVID around March, and with what he had, they later suspected it to be COVID. He's now considered high risk, having pneumonia and a trip to the PICU. I'm hoping to overcome my fears in order for him to receive the vaccine. So Dr. Orton, what could you say to this parent?
So, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that. For one, I tell you, if we could have had that vaccine on moment one, I would have been first in line, or tried to have been. We do know from studies that with actual disease, though you build a little bit of immunity, it is not long term, and it's not as robust as the immunity from the vaccine. And actually, the immunity from the vaccine for the 12 to 18-year-olds is much more robust than when given to older adults. Their immune system is ripe and prime and can really build a good response. And the bigger the response, the more long-term that duration is for protection in theory. So it is absolutely safe to have the vaccine and encouraged to have the vaccine despite having the disease. You know, there's only a very few special circumstances that you would wait 3 months post-vaccine. And that's if you had to have a certain medication, which would have meant that you were in the ICU. So truly, you know, it is safe for your young person to be vaccinated. I hope that answers your question and alleviates some of the fears. It's always, you know, it's definitely nerve-wracking to have the vaccine. I would say in my experience, I was less nervous about this one. My godsons, I remember the day that the oldest turned 2 months and I had to give him his vaccines, and I'm hyperventilating, and I'm like, hold it, you talk the talk all the time now, you know, walk it. And I took a breath and gave him his shots, and it was like, he's going to be fine. And he was. So I understand your fears and concerns, but it truly is a safe vaccine.
Great, thank you. And I did chat into this parent separately that being here and learning more is a way to also alleviate some of that fear and anxiety. At least for me, more knowledge is power. So kudos to you for being on. The next question is, how are the researchers measuring the duration of efficacy for vaccine? Is this with the trial participants only, or are people in broader society being measured in some way to help clarify this question?
It is in the trial participants, but also in anyone who signed up for VSafe when you got your vaccine. I still get messages. I was fortunate to be able to be vaccinated in December, and I still get periodic messages. How are you feeling? Have you had COVID? Have you had any side effects or any concerns? So there's, you know, millions of us out there that are feeding data back so that you know, we'll know long term how effective, how long lasting is this vaccine. Do I expect that we'll probably at some point need a booster? Absolutely. Almost I don't think there is any vaccine out there right now that doesn't require a booster. Some of them are just, you know, 2 and done, but others are, you know, tetanus boosters every 10 years, sometimes 5, depending on the circumstance. So, you know, won't surprise me that there'll be a booster, but certainly, you know, rumors were early on before the vaccine even came out that it was going to have to be every 3 months, which, you know, has been unfounded. And again, as the studies have moved forward, and we're close to a year out from the initial study participants, and from what, you know, although that's not published data, certainly the 6-month stuff is coming up to be published, and from what I understand, the immunity is holding strong.
Great, and just to follow up, great, and just to follow up on the young adolescent who probably had COVID. You mentioned a certain medication while in the ICU, and this child was in the PICU. So can you please elaborate on what that medication was or is?
It's a long name that is a tongue twister, but it's one of the antibody type medications that was given to combat the COVID. And my understanding of that is that you need to be 3 months out from that. But again, that would be a good question to directly ask his physician, because they're going to have the actual name, because there's several different ones that were given, but only a couple of them require waiting a little bit. So certainly if it's been longer than 3 months, there's no need to wait at all. Just you go ahead and sign them up.
Great. The next question is, I'm worried that the vaccine hasn't been tried on enough 12 to 15-year-olds and that there are some repercussions or side effects that haven't been identified yet. How many 12 to 15-year-olds have been in the trials? Do you think that's enough? Is there any benefit in waiting a few weeks until more 12 to 15-year-olds have been vaccinated?
So the vaccine was initially studied in tens of thousands of people, 16 and above. So the 16 to 19-year-old's body is not a terribly lot different than a 12 to 15-year-old body, not from a physiologic standpoint. So once it was shown safe and effective in that group and received the emergency authorization, the group was, the testing was, or the vaccine was offered in, in a trial situation to the 12 to 15-year-olds. Not as big of a population was discovered because they only make up about 5% of the US population. So the numbers studied represent that proportion. And so, yes, I do think enough was studied. Steph, can you hold on just 1 second? Because my, and I didn't mean to click out of the slideshow. I just, my battery is going off. Hold on just 1 second, guys.
Okay, no problem. So while Dr. Orton is getting her battery charger, keep thinking about questions. I am going to put in the chat box a link to send questions to if you think of them after the fact, and we will get the answer back to you. You do have to include your email, but it will be me who's getting the answer back to you. I won't be answering it. I am not a clinician, but I will get one of our clinicians to answer it for you. So that link is right there. And I really want to also say that we are so appreciative of all these questions coming out. We understand that this feels very sudden. This whole year has felt like a rush of emotions. And so it's really great that you are all here and really important that you're asking these questions, and that trusted pediatricians and clinicians are, reaching out in this way to answer these, and they really want to be that resource for you. So I just appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us.
Okay, I'm back and plugged in. Note to self,
Great.
always plug in.
Great. So I think, so you thought that was enough people kids in the trial or adolescents in the trial. Yeah. The last part of that was, is there any benefit in waiting a few weeks until more have been vaccinated?
I don't believe that there's any benefit in waiting until more has been vaccinated. But if in your heart of hearts you feel like that is your best decision, that you just want to wait a couple weeks, then there's not any real harm. But certainly, continue your mitigation measures of masking and social distancing and only being with other families who are either vaccinated or kind of your pod.
Great. And a message from the parent with the child who had COVID saying, beautiful, thank you, that calms my nerves. So that's great to hear. One follow-up question to, also my son is currently inundated with seasonal allergies. I hear you on that one on a personal level. Are there any conflicts with allergy medicines?
There is no conflicts with allergy medicines. Perfectly safe to continue to take them while when he gets vaccinated.
Great. If your child is in between doses for another vaccine, for example, Gardasil dose 1 and 2, is it safe to get the Pfizer vaccine if it has been more than 2 weeks?
It's even safe to get it, in the same week or the same day. So certainly 2 weeks out is absolutely, not a problem whatsoever, to go ahead and get it. Or, say Tdap or Menactra, those are the common teen vaccines that may be happening for kids getting ready to go off to college. If they haven't had their vaccine yet, their COVID vaccine, they're going to be offered Men B, the meningitis B vaccine, which is certainly not prevalent, but happens enough in the college students that they should get that. But they shouldn't postpone either vaccine. They just need to go ahead and get vaccinated.
Wonderful. Well, we are caught up in the chat. So if anybody has any last minute questions, please type them in. And Dr. Orton, do you want to share any final thoughts with the group this evening?
I hope this has been helpful and alleviated your fears and concerns, and provided some useful information, both for yourself and information that you can share. Certainly there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we're just, pediatricians throughout the state have come together to say we need to get this message out that it is safe and effective, and we need to get our kids back in school and back doing their activities. It's, on last Thursday when it opened up, I had parents in, and we were helping them get on to get registered because they couldn't wait. And and every day more and more I get, things flowing into our office of this person was vaccinated and this person was vaccinated, and it really warms my heart. I'm so excited. It's going to make life get back to more of what we were used to having. And I hope you will all consider being vaccinated yourself and getting your teens, and when the time comes, if you have younger ones, to getting them vaccinated too. And hopefully by the time the youngsters come out, we'll be able to vaccinate in our own offices. It's a supply issue, supply storage issue. So hopefully that issue will be solved by the time the littles come around. So
that's great. Well, lots of kudos to you, Dr. Orton, that this has been super helpful, and appreciation for your time and information. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Orton, for presenting, and thank you all for joining us and asking really great questions. And again, if you have more questions, reach out to your pediatrician or your primary care practitioner, and/or use the link to the Google form to ask follow-up questions. So thank you all so much, and have a great evening. Enjoy the weather.
thank you.
Good night.